Howdy everyone, my name is Brent, this is Joe, you could call him Joe, and today we're giving our presentation on video game media literacy and why it's important, why it's something we should consider. We want to start off on a bit of a personal note today, actually. When I was young, I lived in Texas, and I had a lot of family that lived in Utah, and what that meant for me was we had a lot of 20-hour car trips crammed into the back of a minivan with my 8-year-old legs being jammed against the chair in front of me and me being hungry and having to go to the bathroom and my brothers being loud, which is not a fun time. But what was a good time was, thankfully on these road trips I had my Game Boy and I had the game Tetris for the Game Boy. And I had my headphones in it and I would just drift away into the world of Tetris. It's not a very immersive, grand landscape of the game, but just watching the blocks fall would pass the time for me. And honestly, it's probably what got me through those 20-hour car rides. It was a long, long time that I got through thanks to Tetris. And the hours would just go away. And much later on in my life, I started doing a little bit of looking into it because video games are still something that interests me. And I found that in 2000, Harvard actually did a study on the effects of Tetris on people who played it for long periods of time. And they found that even after people had put the game away for hours, they would still have the mental images of the game playing through their head. And even people with brain damage that couldn't form new memories, that had no memory of ever playing the game, would still see the mental images of blocks falling and lines clearing. So this video game has a profound psychological effect on people in general, and specifically on my childhood, and I'm not the only one that feels that way.
And this is what we really want to talk about, is trying to understand that video games, while they may have a lot of negative consequences to them, also have a lot of positives that we can look to, and they should be appreciated like other types of media.
When we're all growing up, we grow up in school and we do things like book reports. So I started reading books like the Bailey School Kids number 39, Dracula Doesn't Rock and Roll. And then a little bit later on in my life, I started reading books like The Great Gatsby for school. And while I love both of these books dearly, I would argue that The Great Gatsby has a little bit more to offer than the Bailey School Kids Dracula Doesn't Rock and Roll. And that's okay. That's media literacy. It allows us to recognize the good and the bad in different things and understand what they have to offer. Is there good? Is there bad? What am I looking at? And can I dissect that and figure out what its effect on me? And this doesn't just apply to books.
It also applies to movies. As we can see, one of these movies has a lot more substance than the other, clearly the Emoji Movie, which is essentially one giant long commercial, and Gone with the Wind has a lot of substance to it. But unlike Brent that liked those books, I hate both these movies. I think the Emoji Movie is pretty boring. I also think Gone with the Wind is very boring. But you can't say that Gone with the Wind doesn't help you feel and think. So what we want to say is that even though you don't necessarily like everything, it's important for us to be able to understand things so we can really be able to dive into something and be able to learn from it.
We develop this sense of being able to parse out what has value and what doesn't in books and movies and TV shows, and what we're arguing is that that's something we should be able to carry into video games as well. So what we're going to be talking about today is why on earth does this matter? Why are we talking about it today? What are the good things that video games have to offer? And then also, what are the negatives? And just where do we go from here? What do we do because of this results? So why does this matter?